City of Wind is a story of a young man called Ze. He's 17 years old and in high school, last year of high school, and he also happens to be a shaman. And he falls in love with a girl who comes to his spirit for help. And the film is a coming-of-age romance, but it's also a story about modern-day Mongolia, modern-day Mongolians, and how young people in Mongolia are living on this very, I guess, complex background with tradition and modernity. I was taken to a shaman myself by my mother, and we were late for the ritual, so I didn't get to meet the shaman before the beginning of the ritual. We kind of went into the room while things were happening, and I had the ritual, and afterwards I was waiting for my mother to come out. I was sitting on the couch waiting, and this young man came and sat next to me, and he was a super charismatic, super cool young man. At that time he was 20, 19, 20, like freshman in college, and he had tattoos on both arms. And he had an earring. He was just a super cool young man. And I was around 25, so I was older. And I remember thinking like, oh, I didn't see this. I didn't see him during the ritual. Where did he come from, you know? And after we left the house, my mother told me that he was actually the shaman that was giving the ritual. And I just thought it was so strange that before I had this very this encounter where we were just these two modern Mongolians who don't know each other and don't really interact and don't care about each other. And 20 minutes before, we were in this very intimate encounter, and I was telling him all the problems I was having in life and asking for help and support and asking for comfort. And so I think it's the shift, or I guess how different these two encounters are, even though we're both the same people, and how much it explains what it means to be a young Mongolian, and how much it explains the different types of roles and responsibilities that Mongolian young people have to carry. And I felt that this was a perfect way to, I think, talk about modern Mongolia. And at that moment, actually, when my mother told me that he was the shaman, I also felt that I understood something about myself as well. Because I was in my mid-20s, I was having this crisis. I didn't know, I think I was feeling overwhelmed, and I didn't know exactly how to live my life. It was, I think, most young people go through this between the ages of 25 and 30, probably. So it was during this this crisis period that I met with the shaman. Being Mongolian is more complex than I thought it was, because when you are living in Mongolia and going from day to day with all these different responsibilities, and you don't really think about it. But I think when I saw him, I understood myself a bit more. And I understood also why I was having such a problem or a crisis in life, and why I was feeling so overwhelmed. And also this image of like the shaman taking off the headdress, that image also very strongly came down as this inspiration for the film. And I just thought it's like talking, it explains all of Mongolia, or at least modern Mongolia, in just one image, this act of taking off the headdress and revealing that this ancient spirit was actually carried by a very young man. Tergol, he's the main character, the actor who played the protagonist, Zay. Tergol, when I cast him, he was 18 years old. He had just graduated from high school, so he finished high school, and a month later, I cast him. And he wanted to be in the film industry, and he was thinking probably camera department. He wanted to also try acting, but I think he spoke to someone from the industry in Mongolia, and they told him that his face was too funny, or that he would suit comedy roles and things like that. So he was thinking, oh, I could probably be a comedy actor. And so he was actually, at the time when I cast him, he was camera assistant on a series that my friend was producing. And I was in the final stage of casting and had selected 3 young men. And we were coming to the final days, and I had to make a selection between these 3 people, and I was not feeling very good about any of them. And so I just called, I texted my producer friend in Mongolia. I said, do you have anyone who's 17 to 19, don't need to have experience, but they just want to try out? I was really desperate. I was just throwing out, something. I was just trying to catch my luck. And she sent me a picture of a guy holding a C-stand on the set. And she said, well, there's this kid here. I don't know, do you like him? Do you like his face? And I said, just tell him to come meet me tomorrow. I just need to see him in real person. And he came, and 30 minutes later, I knew that I had found the person. So, yes, and I think I chose him even though he didn't have any experience, because when I met him, unlike the other young men that I was meeting, he had access to his emotions. And it was very strange how, when I was casting, during the process of casting, and when I talked to young men about, just generally to get to know them, talk about their emotions and things, they don't really understand when they are mad, when they are sad. Sometimes they can talk about something really painful, but they will be so matter-of-fact about it. And so when I ask them to act like a emotional scene, they have to force it. Whereas Tergol, it was very funny. I basically asked him to recite a children's poem about a lamb, about a baby sheep. And it's a very short poem that everyone in Mongolia knows how to recite. And before reciting the poem, I asked him, for example, the first time I asked him when was the time when he felt really sad and why he felt really sad, and he could really talk about his emotions. And as he was talking about them, he started to get emotional. And I said, hold on to that emotion. Can you please recite the poem? And he started to cry as he's reciting this poem about the baby sheep. And then I asked him about, for example, his girlfriend and why he likes her, why he loves her, and how she makes him feel. And then I said, okay, hold on to that emotion, because his face, like his eyes were lighting up as he was speaking about her. And now recite the poem, about the baby sheep. And so he's reciting the baby sheep poem with love and with affection, and you can see it, and it's important to see it in his face. And so I did another session where I asked him what makes him angry. So the whole point is that it doesn't matter what's coming out of his mouth, because the poem is the same throughout the whole thing, but it's the fact that he's able to express, or at least he has access to his emotions, and that he can tap into those emotions and express them, And this is very rare in young men in Mongolia. Already by the age of 17, 18, 19, very guarded, they're already like, I'm a man type of a mode. And when they act emotional scenes, it really has to be forced. And it's a pity because, you know, actors should have more than usual, like more than us, like an easy access to their emotions. So Tergo was really special and unique in that sense. And it was the last, you know, I guess I found him in the last moment, and I was very, very lucky. And not only did he have access to his emotions, but there was also, you know, emotions that really show on his face. But he was also something mysterious, I think, in his eyes. So I needed him to be believable as a teenager, someone super awkward, young, hormonal. But I also need him to be believable as someone who is responsible for carrying the spirit and for being a messenger between different levels of existence. So there was something, I think, in his eyes that was more mysterious as well, which made me believe that there was something beyond just this facade of awkwardness, because in real life he's really awkward. So he didn't need to act that at all. He's got 2 left feet.
چطور؟ سعی خیرست. زه. زه چی گاوت؟ قایم. عون گوی جاخ یریش.
The girl, Marla, she is actually a bit older than him. When we shot the film, she was already starting 3rd year of acting school. And she comes from an acting family. Her father is a quite well-known actor in Mongolia, quite successful. So she's a super professional actress. She's on time. She takes things very seriously. You know, she memorizes everything. I mean, you know, she's very pro. And I liked this, this mix between Tergo, who is completely an amateur, and Nomen, who has already acted in a feature film before, actually. So she was quite experienced. And I liked that there was this tension between them, because she was kind of like, oh, who's this amateur at the beginning? And he was feeling really intimidated by her, actually. And so I think that I think it helped this, this tension between them, I think, especially when they first meet. And so I wanted to work with that. And I wanted her to also inspire him, you know, to also kind of like teach him about how to be professional, how to be on set, because all of this is new for him. And I wanted her to also be kind of caught off guard, I guess, by somebody who doesn't take it seriously at all. Because Tergo he's so goofy in real life. He's such a class clown, and it's really to his credit that in the film you can't tell that he's such a goofball. And so he never took anything seriously. He was constantly cracking jokes and driving Nomen, the girl, crazy. Because, and so I think it was just this interesting mix. And at one point, I think, especially when we started shooting, I was like, oh man, is it gonna work out? Because I feel like maybe they hate each other a little bit. But the shoot is something that's very intense, and it really also creates very intimate relationships. So it, I mean, they became best friends at the end. I mean, it was good. And I tried to use the differences between them as much as possible, and tried also not to force things. And so I never, for example, when we were rehearsing, I never gave them the script, and I just explained to them what each scene was. And then I tried to have them make it up on their own. And then if I needed some particular text or dialogue, maybe I would give it to one of them. You know, it would be nice if you say this. And so I tried to really incorporate their movements and gestures and their ideas into the scene as well. The city is, it's expressing also this transition period that Zé is going through, because he's a teenager. He's kind of in this in-between space between childhood and adulthood. And the place where he lives, the yurt districts, is also this transition space between nomads and the city, the urban life. So the yurt district is where in the last 20, 30 years, you know, nomads have migrated from the countryside, and they set up their yurts around the center of the city and started the urban lifestyle. And because there's been such a huge migration in the last 30 years, the city just kind of expanded. And a big part of the city right now is the yurt districts. And we have half of the city living in yurt districts as well. And so for me, it's very important to set the film in this particular part of the city, because generally speaking, this part of the city is always associated with, I guess you could say, backwardness, nomadic, you know, this type of old lifestyle, poverty, crime, and it's also talked of as like the beginning point. So like a lot of famous people will say, oh yeah, we started from zero. We started in the yurt district, and now this is our, you know, like doing home tours. You know, this is like a thing that people do, famous people do in Mongolia. And so it's always associated as being like the 0 point, or backward, or poor. And it really makes me sad, because there's, I mean, so many people, I mean, half of the population of the city making a living and living with dignity. So I wanted to depict this space with a bit of a different gaze, and to have more of a naturalistic view of this space that doesn't have this agenda or perspective or some kind of angle on it. And I really tried to just approach this this space, the yurt district, as like the perspective of I don't know, of nature, of just, you know, being part of the space, exactly what that means and how that feels, and what do you see and what do you hear, and to see also, you know, people living and in this part of the city. And so it was very important for me to depict this this part of the city, because a lot of young people are living in this part of the city, and it includes the future of Mongolia. And I wanted to empower the young people with by looking at their lives with kindness and positivity and compassion. And also, I mean, the city for me in the film is a way to, very easily show actually the last 30 years of history of Mongolia. particularly in that shot that kind of insists and, you know, with music, and it kind of reveals the different levels and layers of the city, you know, from the very modern new buildings to the Soviet buildings, and then the yurt districts, and then the mountains, and then you imagine the nomads, you know, later in much further in the distance. This is the history of Ulaanbaatar city and of the country in the last 20-30 years. That's why I wanted to really insist on this image for people to really look at it, not just, you know, it's not just the city. It's at the beginning, I think it's a city, but then, you know, I really want people to explore this image, and I put music on it so that people also understand the emotional aspect of all of this history and this the transition that we've been living in the last 30 years. Another intention for me was to centralize the universe of the story in the yurt district. And so the relationship between the yurt district and the city center is actually, the city center is like the margins, and the yurt district is really the central universe of this character. And and throughout the film, he kind of actually has these little trips to the center of town, you know. It's also to say, like, the city center is always in the distance. It's something that you kind of see from far away, and it's part of, I think, this ideal Mongolian dream, you know, Mongolian dream, Mongolian modern life. But it's in the distance, and I wanted to show it like that because I think it's becoming more and more like an inaccessible dream, and also a bit, it's a bit ridiculous. All these buildings, you know, it's such a tiny city with, it's just so many buildings popping up. It's so, how can I say, it's so, it's ugly. Because it's just concrete everywhere, and it's sad that that's our dream. That's kind of the goal for everyone, you know, in Mongolia, is to move into an apartment. It's the goal since, I mean, it's really the Mongolian dream, and I want to make this film where the universe is not there, so that we understand and we feel the existence of another type of space. A space which is more suitable to our nomadic, traditional mentality. Because this space is the one that allows us to still have a direct relationship with nature. By direct, I'm talking about daily connections. So I wanted to show, you know, these people throwing milk to the sky and the river and the mountains, and this is a daily relationship that you can have with nature. It's really a strong connection, you know, to do this every morning. But you can't do this in apartments. And so in the middle of the city, you see this old woman doing it, but on a monument, you know. And I really think that apartments is not the real answer for Mongolia, Mongolian future. I think the yurt district is actually something that allows a space that really allows us to be modern and traditional at the same time. And I wish that the yurt district received more attention and care from Mongolians, from everyone, from politicians, the government, but also people living in the yurt districts, because the dream is to always move out and to move to an apartment, you know. The Mongolian film industry is really at a new stage right now, I would say, because after communism, the industry completely disintegrated, because before it was supported by the state and it was always connected to the state and public funding and also propaganda and all these things. But after communism, like all of the infrastructure and the support fell apart. And so there were all these cinema artists with no understanding or way to make a film. And there's no industry. And so there was a generation that was quite lost after 1990. But I think around 2000s, with digital technology, young people started to kind of make films on their own, because it was much, much easier than to shoot, on even VHS tapes and things like that, because film is so expensive and so inaccessible. And so it's basically more younger, more independent, and also mainstream cinema started to form in the 2000s because of this, like the advent of digital technology. And so what has happened is that in the 20 years since the 2000s, there is I think I would say a thriving local industry, where every year there's so many films being made only for the Mongolian audience, and some of them lose their money, the money that they kind of raised to shoot the film, and some of them make a lot of money because the winter in Mongolia is quite long and we have a very young population, so cinema going is actually quite popular. And so I would say there's been this local industry, mainly mainstream, that makes films, just for local people and tries to profit locally. But since I was starting out making City of Wind and looking for international partners and really trying to make this film not locally with, I don't know, a very, very small budget that I tried to, make back with the local audience. Since I started trying to look for international partners and things like that, very serendipitously, by luck and fortune and chance, different things started to happen in the Mongolian cinema industry, one of which is some interest from outside. So for example, Locarno Film Festival did a focus on Mongolia in 2019, starting in 2019 for 3 years. So it invited people like me and Mongolian artists to come to Locarno and pitch their projects, and this film was one of those projects that got support from the Open Doors program at Locarno Film Festival. And the other thing is, aside from this international interest, there was a local initiative to start a fund, a national film fund, that would give some financing to art house cinema. And this was a huge step up for us, because it also makes possible international co-productions, because then we have some support from the Mongolian side and we can partner up with countries like Switzerland and France. And we also had a Mongolian Film Council newly established in the last couple of years as well, which has been really helpful in connecting the rest of the world to Mongolian artists, because they go to festivals representing Mongolian film. And so all these new steps in the last 5 years, I would say, has been super important and really giving a new life and also new energy for the young Mongolian filmmakers. And I really, really hope and I think that the world will have more access to Mongolian films in the coming years.
Хайртай дуртайгаа эртгээр хэлээрээ амьдрал богинохон шүү гэж шүү.
Чи болсон юм уу?
За,
А?
болсон.
За чи ихлээ. За миний энэ зурсан зураг бол малчин маасаа хийсэн зөө.
Малчаа марлаа.
Аа. За энэ ингээд чиний хоньнууд байна зөө. Чи нэг итгэл амтай. Тэгээд энэ нөгөө нэг миний өвлөө идгээд савдаа байна зөө. Тэгээд энэ хоньны чи хашаа байна, хоосоо байна, өвөл нар байна. Энэ шовоо шүү зөө. Энэ танаа гэр байна.
Халц шиг харагд.
Танаа энэ гэр байна зөө ингээд галт үлдсэн. Энэ ааруулах тааж байгаа шүү зөө.
Хүчтэй ямар сайн юм наа гэж жижигхэн харамар зарсан юм.
Энэ чи хар дээлтэй байгаа байхгүй юу? Чи хөдөө дээл нөмсөн нэстэй. Тэгээд энэ мод өрцсөн мó. Боож байгаа. Марл гэж байгаа юм.
Мөрөөдөлтөө хүрсэн зэ гэдэг зураг. За тэгээ чи сайн харах юм бол ингээд би чаг бөөгөр чин зурсан.
За.
За тэгээ энд чинь хидчин байна. За тэгээд ингээд
Монгол хөтлөө юм уу?
Монгол гутал байна.
Хэм юм яц.
Зурлаа шүү
Йоо.
дээ. Ажилтаа.
Энэ ингээ могоонод юм уу?
За тэгээд ингээд чи шинэ байрандаа ингээд орцсон гоё байр шээ
За.
заяа. Гоё чараагүй. Тэгээд ингээд хоёр цонхтой. Тэгээд энэ ингээд чиний өвднүүд байна. Лагл зарсан. Тэгээд энийг хар. Чиний байрыг чи барьж байгаа энэ каран. Гоёс. За яарсан нийт чинь. Би чаас хааг л гоё зурдаг юм байна.
The film was the opening film of Oulan-Bator Film Festival in 2023. Yes. And it was selected to be the Mongolian entry for the Oscars. And we had a very small release in theaters in Mongolia as well. We have in Mongolia a very strong art house cinema lovers, cinephile, young population. And for them, I think it was a super interesting experience because, you know, it won awards and it was selected at these prestigious festivals and things like that. So I think there was a lot of curiosity and interest around the film. And I think the response was really interesting because obviously the film was loved and supported by everyone, but I think it was a bit of a different cinema than what is usual for the general cinema-going population. And it was interesting to have dialogues around this. And I like, you know, also I like films that also talk about the Mongolian identity and how to portray that as well, because films like City of Wind, they're getting such international interest and recognition, and what it means to represent Mongolia, because we are representing Mongolia and people, a lot of the, you know, interest coming from outside is just solely based on the fact that it's from Mongolia. And so somehow we are representing, we're kind of like the ambassadors of Mongolia, and what that means, this responsibility, but also for the filmmaking, what that means and how it should affect the process and things that you think about as a filmmaker. Yeah.
Яаж байгаа та нар? Энэ ангийг нураах нь уу? Орохгүй та нар. Намаа гарга. 87 дугаар хуудас. Бүх бодлогыг бодно шүү. Чи юунд энийг даа?
Инээж болтгүй мө агшаа.
Бити хуцаад ээ.
Хүн хуцдаг, нохоол хуцдаг үсттэй.
Чи юу гэнэ? Чи сая юу гэсэн бэ? Яс олон юм ярьдгийг чи. Балер хүүхэн чинь. Чимээг олооч. Дугаал гэж байна. Хайрыг дугаал гэж байгаа юм шүү. Чимээгвэ. Чимээгвэ. Чимээгвэ гэж хэлээд байна.
City of Wind really got its beginning, I would say, beginning of the financing through the Locarno Open Doors initiative, where it received the production grant. The first financial support was from Switzerland, so I just really want to thank the Swiss people for supporting the film, and I'm very, very happy that the film is connecting and finding its audience in Switzerland, and I hope everyone enjoys the film.